Welcome to Everything Teams Phone Live. Ba-da-ba-da-ba-bow. Ba-da-ba-da-ba-bow. Welcome, everybody. Episode 87, Everything Teams Phone Live, coming at you today. Whew, what a Friday. Is everybody ready for the weekend? I'm super excited for the weekend this weekend. I'm already starting it.
Looks like you've already started it, Rick.
I haven't. I promise I'm working. Look at this. This is a working situation here. I'm excited that we've got Ollie Lively from Luware joining us. This is kind of a bit of a recap from Enterprise Connect, if you will. Last week we were at Enterprise Connect. Ollie, we missed you at Enterprise Connect, but we got a chance to catch up with the entire Luware team, your CEO. It was great to meet him and sit down and have a good discussion with him. So we'll get recapping. Brandon, how are you today? Bailey, we'll get to the admin. Bailey, we'll get to the admin. But Brandon, how are you doing?
I'm here. You all saw me all scattered in the green room. Got a lot of things going on going into the weekend, but we're here now. We're settled. We're going to have a good conversation. Ollie, welcome to the show. Bailey, sweep us up and do our housekeeping for us.
Do it.
Sure thing. Happy Friday, everybody. This episode of Everything Teams Phone Live is sponsored by Momentum, where we help businesses thrive using Microsoft Teams. Back to you guys for episode 87.
Thanks,
87.
Bailey.
Here we go. Thank you, Bailey. All right, Ollie, you were not at Enterprise Connect, Ollie, and if you don't mind, it's a personal reason. I'm gonna ask you why you weren't there. It's the biggest telecom sort of communication show, probably on both sides of the pond, if you will. But you weren't there. But you weren't there for a good reason. Do you mind sharing?
Yeah, absolutely. So we have the exciting news that we've got a baby boy coming in exactly a month's time, apparently. So I still can't quite believe it yet. So we'll see. But yeah, in a month's time, you might be looking at a more tired version of this face. That's why I decided to not fly across the Atlantic. So I thought it wouldn't be particularly good if I was over in Orlando and the baby started coming. But I'm excited to be here with you guys today.
That probably would have guaranteed the arrival of the baby boy.
Oh, yeah. That's exactly what it's exactly right. Being like, you come over, you're like, no, it's fine. We got a month. It'd be okay. And yeah, as soon as you land, it'd have been,
be straight back.
Here we go.
Yep.
All right. Well, what do we, Brandon, you've got a lineup for us today. There's some interesting things that we picked up out of Microsoft, some extensibility stuff. Let's talk about what are those things that we're going to talk about today.
Yeah, I think today's focus on the show, and hence why we've invited Ollie and Luware to the call, is to talk about Microsoft's announcement around the extensibility of calling. And I was actually talking to, and I might be wrong, but I'm going to call out Tom Arbuthnot just because I'm pretty sure that's who I was talking to about. There was. We've had Ollie on the show numerous times. He might actually be taking the crown for the most popular guest. We'll have to go check that out. Might have to get you some swag or something. But anyway, I was talking to Tom about what was known. You've got the different integrations into Microsoft. There's the extend model. I'm going to get them all wrong, but then you've got the new one, which was the Power. I think it was called Power, and now they've kind of rebranded it as Extensibility. And as I was talking to Tom,
I'll let the audience make their judgment. What's cooler, Power or Extensibility? I have my opinion on that. But
yeah, but Power obviously brought some confusion because you have the whole Power Platform, Power Automate, Power this, Power that. So as I was, I'm pretty sure as I was talking to Tom, he had brought up the they're now calling it extensibility, but let's not get confused with, in February, Microsoft rolled out a Teams feature called extensibility for PSTN calls, which is kind of the backwards version of extensibility that Ollie's going to talk about, where you can, when you get a phone call and that dialog box pops up in Teams, you can now extend screen pop into that dialog window, like a CRM or any kind of third-party application. You can bring it into the dialogue of the call. That's not the direction we're talking about. So we can jump right into it. We can get into the details.
Before we do, I want to let me clarify. So the ways that different contact center solutions integrated with Teams, there was 3, and I may get them wrong too. But Brandon, you loosely alluded to like one of them, and that was like 1.5, and I think it was all wrong. So I'm
Because I can't remember all 3 of them.
So it was Connect, and the Connect model is what you see other providers where their call routing and call sort of manipulation is outside of Teams, and then it pins back into Teams, into the client. Then you had the Extend model, which is you're building to the Power Platform, you're building into the into Teams directly, into the Graph API, and you've got the manipulation of the call right in the Teams tenant. So it's right there in the Teams tenant. And then you took it one step further, where it used to be called the Power, but if anybody that knows the space no one was ever in the Power, in the Power sort of platform. However, organizations like Luware had been building to the Graph exclusively to manipulate the calls and to do all the things all along. And now that model has been opened up, and that's called, is it extensibility or extensible? I can't. Ollie, take it from there. Ollie, did I get those right?
Yeah, absolutely. I've just tried to bring a couple of graphics to help this conversation. But yeah, A star to you, Rick. You got all of them correct. So Connect, as Rick perfectly described, you have your third-party CCaaS solution sitting outside of Teams, and they're essentially using Teams as the endpoint. So all of that intelligence happens outside of Teams, and then you route the call again via another SIP trunk to Teams as the endpoint. So you've got SIP trunks coming in here, third-party cloud, and then SIP trunks there to the Teams app. So yes, it's integrated, but all of the intelligence is happening outside of Teams. With Extend, all of the intelligence happens inside Teams. So the CCaaS app, in our scenario, Nimbus, but the CCaaS app sits as an app inside the customer's tenant. And then it's essentially being the puppet master for that Teams call. In this scenario, and a really nice kind of clean benefit is it doesn't matter where the PSTN comes from. Okay, so that could come from direct routing, Operator Connect, like for example, Momentum's Operator Connect platform, or even calling plans. I'm not sure why you'd want to use calling plans, but some people do, and you can use calling plans as well. Now that third model, we always called Power, or Microsoft always called that Power on their website up until last week. The biggest difference, and we'll go into this in a bit more detail, between Extend and Power, you've still got that agnostic PSTN, so we don't mind where the call comes from in terms of the PSTN call. But instead of that main engine being Graph API, it's now Azure Communication Services. So Azure Communication Services has been around now for a while. It has some really cool technology in it. But I think the best way to describe Azure Communication Services is essentially an API toolkit for developers to build their own apps. And if you think about what some of those tools are, they're things like chats, video routing, AI, recording, a lot of those same tools that Teams is actually built on. But it means developers like us can essentially build our own apps on that. So that's kind of how we've got up to this point today.
Okay. Earlier in the week on Monday, I posted a comment, and Brandon, I don't know if you've seen that one yet, or all of you've seen that yet, where I'm like, the telco industry gets it wrong right now. In this scenario, the telco industry gets it wrong, in that we don't make things low code, no code, right? I give examples of like N8N and Make and things like that. In this scenario, though, basically ACS is not low code, no code, but the Graph API opens up a world of possibilities for you to connect your different applications, bring in chat into your solution, deliver chat, into the Teams sort of tenant, and it just kind of gives you a whole omni-channel opportunity to bring in sort of other applications. Is that kind of something like that we're talking about?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think with the Azure Communication Services, Microsoft are doing something a bit similar to what Amazon have done with Amazon Connect, if anyone's familiar with that solution, where essentially it's a bunch of communication APIs, which CCaaS vendors can build on top. But as you said, Rick, it's not necessarily low code out of the box. So it does require a solution provider to put that all together. But we've already started using chat. So our web chat is using Azure Communication Services. So is our video routing. I think the key thing for us around this extensibility release from Microsoft last week is it's now a certified voice channel. Okay, so voice was already in there, but it just wasn't a certified model. And if we're delivering 10 million calls a month to our customers, we want to make sure that those 10 million calls have an SLA from Microsoft and have a proper certification backed.
I like it. I like it.
Yeah, I was going to say, Rick, I'm commenting back on your low code, no code, because I popped up your LinkedIn post. Actually, it was the first thing that popped up when I opened LinkedIn over here on my other screen. And I was glazing through it. And, the interesting thing about the low code, no code is there's always heavy development somewhere, right? It's how do you lift the complexity in a way that kind of sheds the confusion and the maybe not the clear direction a customer needs to take on when do I bolt this in and how do I bolt that in and how do I integrate these services. And I think it's not even so much speed to market for these things. It's more who's going to be the first one to make it so simple for the user that it's, maybe it's Luware where it's just drag and drop, like, oh, I want chat, I want video, I want this, I want that, and not creating this complex as a customer. Now, how do I actually go make it work? That's where the low code, no code comes in, is getting it in front of a customer where they don't have to be the experts. And even the partners that don't need to be the experts.
And that's where this whole sort of like from an industry perspective, I think about this and I go, what we're trying to do is create better workflows, right, for our customers. We're trying to create better engagements for our customers' customer, right? And so you've got a infinite sort of list of variables to bring in when it comes to applications that organizations use. And in the telco space now, say for Microsoft, let's just say, right, there is, if you have a standalone platform that's a telco platform, it's really clunky to figure out how to make it work with other sort of solutions, right? I mean, and Teams is as close as we get. We tell everybody they need to be on Microsoft Teams because it's the first step in automation. It's the first step in AI consumption. It's the first step in sort of understanding what your interactions are with your customers. But this right here, the extensibility is really helping sort of move in that direction, right? It's like here are all the APIs to bring you closer to that, to connect everything you want to connect. Now, does need to get to that whole low code, no code so someone can understand it better than just the developing sort of teams, right? But you're absolutely right, Brandon, though. It's someone's got to do the development somewhere. And ideally for consumers, for the organizations, it becomes a drag and drop or a simple low code, no code solution, because our industry is changing, right? We want to consume products. We want to consume products faster. We want to consume products on demand, right? And we want to pay for what we're using, right? So those are the things. That's kind of the model that this whole thing. I mean, Amazon Connect does that exactly thing, right? It's like, here's your consumption. It's like, here are the APIs. Go build what you want to build, and we're going to bill you on consumption. That's where the industry's sort of going. So anyway, sorry, didn't mean to derail that, but that was my post earlier today or earlier on Monday.
Yeah. That's exactly where I think Microsoft have been aiming to go with all of the. I mean, it's clear to see everything from Microsoft is Copilot, everything is AI, and I think this monetizes it for them, but it also opens up that everything they develop. It opens up for partners like us or vendors like us to build on that API framework. So, with Graph API, essentially we were just controlling the Teams call, which is great, and it's got us to this point, and it meant that we could do a lot with that Teams call and embed a fully native contact center in Teams. But it meant that if we wanted to go deeper and use the Azure AI stack, including Copilot, Azure AI Foundry, and some other tools, it meant that we had to basically do that post call. We didn't have much access to that real-time cool from a like a transcription perspective, which is what a lot of AI is based on. It's based on that transcription. So that deep integration with Microsoft's AI stack, and it now allows us to do that real time. Okay, so obviously, if we translate that into contact center, there's a load of real world examples we can translate that to. So real time coaching, real time kind of knowledge management pop up from Copilot, real time like supervisor interference or flagging to a supervisor which calls are going south, which calls need assistance. So that is a real big win for us, is that kind of real time element. But as you mentioned, Rick, this will move to a kind of consumption-based pricing model. Exactly what that looks like with Luware and with Nimbus is still kind of yet to be defined. But as you said, Rick, everything is kind of moving towards that consumption base. So it's a bit of a shift from a commercial perspective as well. But it's important to say here that Graph API is still very much available, right? It's not going end of life anytime soon. There's no announcements for that. So what we want to do is essentially offer both of these worlds to customers. As with any new technology, there's going to be some maturing that's needed. There's going to be development that's needed. So it's really important for us to keep offering Extend on the Graph API, but let customers have that choice and flexibility for when they're ready, maybe move their reception service onto it or their external facing contact center onto it on a per service or per queue basis rather than having to go big bang.
Yeah, Ollie, you answered my question because I was going to ask you if the intent with Luware is to offer both models, because I could see, when you start talking about, Azure native services and you get into the per minute pricing and kind of token based utilization type pricing, I could see how that might become a concern for some customers that go, what does that mean for us if they don't understand what that cost model might do to them? So would be interesting to see if Luware, and this is me just shooting off the cuff, with time could come up with kind of a pricing calculator model that can show a customer like, hey, based on this many agents, this amount of talk time, this kind of integration, here's what that cost would look like to you. Be interested to see
I think that's definitely something we need to get to. I do know the initial figures I heard was something like 0.004 cents per voice minute. So obviously that all depends on activity, but I don't think that's going to amount to tens of thousands a month. It might in fact amount to a couple of thousand a month, depending on what your volume is. But there are other ACS charges around the AI piece, the recording piece. So if you do want to enable those other services, there are other consumption-based costs. So we're hoping that it's not going to be, obviously, we're still hoping that it's going to be kind of viable for customers. But as you said, Brandon, I think the most important thing, and if there's one takeaway, it's that we need to offer both models, right? So everything that we built on Extend on Graph API will be available for customers in Power. And I've seen the button, right? It is literally, and you were talking about this, Rick, make it easy for customers. It is literally a button on the service to say, do I want this to be Nimbus Power, which is ACS, and you have to connect it to an ACS string, or do I want it to be on Graph, right? So we want to make it as easy as possible for customers to, as and when they're ready, click that button and say, okay, this is now Power enabled for this particular queue.
Yeah. It is interesting that this is kind of the way you guys are sort of positioning yourselves perfectly for this sort of consumption model, right? It is, I think the easier it is to slide into an organization where you're not buying the whole big thing and you're consuming and paying for what you consume. I think it makes it easier for people to just to say yes and bring it into the organization and manage costs from there, right? Give them the capabilities. It's like organizations aren't children. You don't have to put guardrails up for them, right? It's like, deliver the service to them, let them consume what they want to consume when they want to consume it. So that's pretty exciting, Ollie. I think this is great. If you were just kind of throwing out a couple of things, if you focused on a couple of really significant product sort of enhancements that you see that organizations are going to be able to take in, what would you say your favorite or your most applicable that you think is going to be popular in the space?
Yeah, no, it's a good question. I've spoken about AI a bit, and there are some really cool AI features, but I don't want to be the guy who's just banging on about AI stuff in the future, because obviously some of that's down the line. So
I do now all day long now. That's all I do now all day long.
I'll
I tried to
leave
stay
that
out of it.
leave that to
I
you.
tried to stay out of it. All right, so go ahead. Go ahead.
But I think one thing there at the bottom, and this is a Microsoft term, something this enables is dual persona, right? And I'll explain a bit about what that is. So this is obviously labeled as Microsoft Teams phone extensibility. But one of the really nice features that it allows for is it means that we don't actually have to build that end user experience in Teams. Okay. So that means that the end user can live somewhere else other than Teams if it makes sense to do so. So the first place that we're going to implement that is with our attendant console. So in the reception console currently, the call has to be answered via the Teams toast. And then what most users would do is minimize that and then handle the rest of the call in the attendant console. We've for years wanted to actually have that whole experience in the attendant console, right? So that's going to allow us to do that straight away. Say, okay, it sounds really simple. And you see it on a demo, you'll be like, oh, is that it? But actually, I think that's a massive quality of life improvement to say, okay, I answer the call in the attendant console, I handle the whole thing in the attendant console, because for a user, it doesn't make sense to have to answer it in Teams and then handle it somewhere else. Another example of that will be when we build this into a CRM application. So what we are able to do with this dual persona is essentially build all the call handling as an embedded app into the CRM. So if a customer service team is sitting all day, every day in ServiceNow, they don't have to answer the call in Teams and then go to ServiceNow. They can actually handle the call in ServiceNow, still transfer to people who are sitting in Teams, but then they only have one pane of glass, one place to live. So that dual persona, I think, is going to be a really good quality of life improvement for a lot of users.
I think both of those are like I almost said freaking huge. Both of those are pretty freaking huge, right? Because if you think about it, and Brandon, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, but that whole toaster pop up where you have to answer the call and then maneuver to the application to go do something, that's a pain, right? The whole idea behind contact centers is to really shave seconds or minutes off of your handling and things like that. So having that sort of in the attendant console, I'm sure it's just a button that says answer call, nothing else except something like that where you're answering call and you take the call and you're live in the attendant console because that's where you live to maneuver the calls around. That's awesome. But the other one that you just said, I think is even sexier. And that is for organizations that live in, and we know plenty of them, Brandon, in ServiceNow, in Salesforce, right? In Zendesk, all these organizations live in that. I went to buy a mattress, I don't know, a month ago, a Satva or a Satva, or I don't know, some mattress where they had a store here in Scottsdale. And just for kicks and giggles, and I'm sure you guys do the same thing every time you go to an organization, I'm sure you're as curious and nosy as I am. They had a bank of people inside this retail store. And we walked around the bank and we're like, what are you doing back here in this bank? And they're like, we're a call center. I'm like, so in the retail store, they've got like 5-6 people set up as a little call center to take sales calls. And so I walk around back there and they're in Zendesk, right? And they're using Zendesk dial tone or whatever. And it's like, it's not particularly, great, but I'm like, it'd be amazing if they were in Teams, had a Teams organization, but could live in Zendesk with a button for Teams.
Because we often find that exactly as you described, Rick, you have pockets of users that live in an application, but the wider organization has a Microsoft strategy, has a team strategy, and that wins, which is obviously good for us. That's one. But then those users miss out in a little way because they have to use Teams, and maybe that's not the best application for them. So with this, you're kind of best of both worlds. They'll still be connected to the wider Teams organization. They'll still be able to transfer across, but that experience will live in that application of choice, which it will mean we have to build it in each application, which is obviously more development work. I think we're looking at Salesforce first, then ServiceNow, and then some others after. So yeah, it just allows that choice.
Great options. Brandon, you were going to say something. I cut you off.
Yeah, no, just to add to that commentary, I think this is another really good step for Microsoft to allow people like Luware to become more relevant to the bigger organizations that, we talk to organizations all the time that they ask, well, can we put the call control in Salesforce as an example? And we say, well, not without a lot of heavy development. And that alone can detract bigger organizations from even being interested in entertaining a Teams phone conversation, especially around their sales force, meaning the sales side of the house, and their contact center side of the house. So I think this kind of is I'll call it maybe a cherry on top, right? There's multiple cherries when we talk about big complex solutions, but this, I think, allows that conversation to be held with the bigger organizations, when now the story is, yes, we can do this with ServiceNow or Salesforce or maybe Zendesk down the road, where you can now have your front of house and back of house on the same calling platform. And I think we will become even more interesting, and this is pointed at Ollie, not to put you on the spot, Ollie, is to take that development to the next level of, Rick, you were talking about Zendesk native calling in that type of contact center, where the stats can coexist in, if I'm working on cases or opportunities or deals, and there's all of these KPIs that can be reported. It'll be really interesting to see, again, back to Ollie, how you guys develop into Zendesk, Salesforce, ServiceNow, and can those KPIs be pulled and pushed in both directions, right? So now I'm a native Salesforce admin. I can pull all the KPIs out of Salesforce, or vice versa. I'm the phone admin, and I want to see all the stats with my Luware integration included. It'll be interesting to see how that coexists as development gets deeper and deeper into, this kind of what I'll call seamless environment.
Yeah, on the data side of things, that there's a lot already possible, and a lot that some customers are utilizing and doing exactly that, Brandon, of pushing and pulling data. So a lot of Salesforce organizations we work with, they use our OData API to essentially pull our KPIs and put them into their wider Salesforce dashboards, because the phone or the contact center element of that is only a small part of their wider customer service metrics. So they're obviously looking at a holistic customer service view, which includes metrics around how quick tickets are answered, what the SLA is on response times, etc. And the phone element or the contact center element makes up part of that. So using the OData API, you can pull that across. The way that we would kind of look at doing that the other way is just in our dashboard. So in our typical contact center dashboard, it's possible to embed external widgets or external websites. So we do have customers that look at all of their Salesforce tickets in a Nimbus dashboards against their available users, for example.
Yeah, I know that's possible today with how you have the Graph API integrated. It'll just be interesting to see how this extensibility takes it to just that next level, because then things you were talking about earlier, Ollie, about bringing in maybe native WebRTC flows like click to call and video chats and maybe web chat flows, being able to then extend all of those KPIs as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that having those omni-channel APIs built into the Azure Communication Services ecosystem is a big win for us. Like we have used guys like Twilio to build in omni-channel routing of WhatsApp and SMS. But I think Azure Communication Services, especially in the US, and the UK is catching up, and Europe is slightly behind that. But especially in the US, a lot of those APIs in ACS are now GA. And 2 years ago, there was hardly anything there for SMS or WhatsApp in Azure Communication Services. So it does unlock that multi-channel piece as well. There's one element here which we haven't touched on too much, and people might be a bit confused as to why we're looking at recording here. I think for a long time, organizations using a contact center, they want to record calls and they need to listen to those calls back. and they want to run some topic analysis, sentiment analysis, which is everything that ACS has kind of in it, but it isn't a compliant recording solution. So by enabling convenience recording, as we put it here, this will again just round off that contact center package, when previously up to this point, if somebody just wanted to record a call and do some sentiment analysis on it, they would need to add a third party to the Teams contact center solution. But that allows us to do that natively within the solution, which I think is another really nice win.
That's awesome. That's great. This is all. These are big. These are big sort of updates, right? I mean, they don't. On the surface, it doesn't seem big, but I'll tell you, I'm just sitting here thinking. I was wasn't paying attention for a hot second because I was Googling how many Teams / Salesforce organizations are there, right? Because I look at that and I think about where Luware and Teams are positioned and where Momentum is positioned. I look at this going, the addressable market now gets to extend into the organizations that are both Microsoft and Salesforce and bridge that gap, right, for them via Luware, so that they have that single ecosystem from a communications platform working for them in the way that they like to work, maybe like in Salesforce as an example, where a pocket of their organization works in that Salesforce platform. So pretty cool, exciting stuff.
Cool. Yeah, no, see, it does increase the addressable market for sure. Do you guys want, I don't know how technical you want to get. I think maybe we look at one of these and one more and look at the architecture a bit for all the techies on the call, and then
perfect.
And we start with the slides. So
yeah, perfect.
I think you still need to go, obviously the announcement was only last week, so I think you still need to go through the marketing kind of funnel, but these were the initial kind of architecture drawn by our CTO. I think you met Michael at the stand last week. So essentially the main difference that I mentioned is we're now utilizing, with extensibility or Nimbus Power, we're now utilizing the Azure Communication Services call automation SDK, which sounds like a load of buzzwords, which it probably is. But instead of doing that call handling via Graph API, we're now doing that via ACS. And that opens up a whole load of real-time stuff that we can do with that call. Obviously, we could talk about the omni-channel pieces as well, but the big difference for us, we already had access to the chat and the video. The big difference to us there is the call. So real-time in that call, we can start leveraging Microsoft Cognitive Services. And again, that's a stack that they've been building for a number of years now, which brings things like real-time transcription, translation, sentiment analysis, topic analysis. There's a load of stuff possible with Cognitive Services there. It also means that we can utilize the bot framework. Okay, so we can start building in bots. That might be from Copilot Studio, or if you want to go deeper with your bots, that might be Azure AI Studio or even Microsoft AI Foundry. And then we can bring in those other channels that we spoke about, SMS, chat, WhatsApp. So it's opening up that kind of world of real-time communication APIs for AI, for bots, and for omnichannel. Things like the Power BI for reporting, that is everything. We already had that, and that will all remain the same. So from a reporting perspective, a Nimbus user or a Nimbus customer, they're going to still be able to use all of the dashboards that they use currently, all the real-time dashboards, historical dashboards, Power BI templates. None of that will change. It will just be what we're able to do with that cool real-time. Everything that we can do from an integration perspective with Power Automate flows, all of that really nice stuff remains. It's kind of that real-time capabilities that we're adding here.
And one call out here, Ollie, that I think makes this a little more interesting for viewers and listeners. And I think it was you were showing, not the last slide, but the slide before you were showing, I think it was called out one more back. This one on the right-hand side at the, let's see, I think it's the second to bottom bullet point where it's talking about customer set up the Azure resources. I think the interesting call out here is this is the customer's environment you're working in, right? So customer deploys the Azure resources, Luware connects to it via a secure token. And the thing that makes this interesting is back on the slide you were on showing the diagram, that's the customer's environment that you're working with. So the data is in the customer's environment. All of the AI integrations are sandbox and wall gardened, if you will, in their environment. I think it's worth calling that out because, you know, in the world of AI, that's the biggest question I think a lot of people are going to have is, how do I know that you're connected to a secure environment? How do I know that I can trust that my data is actually my data? And I think it's worth making that mention that this is the customer's environment within Microsoft.
Yeah, 100%. That Nimbus app here is an enterprise app installed into their environment. It's connecting into their ACS string, if you like. So, and as you said, Brandon, I think that was always important for keeping data in the tenant. But when you start talking about AI, it's just, yeah, it's massive, right? That's the biggest blocker we see, or not blocker even. That's that we're kind of still in that stage where organizations are getting their data ready for AI, and that is a huge task for organizations to make sure that that's secure, to make sure the infosec teams have gone through all that sign off. So to have that in their environment, but also to be leveraging the Microsoft AI tools, which they may have already started using things like Copilot 365 and other AI tools within Microsoft. So what we're seeing is quite a lot of organizations have kind of started that journey. But if we were to say, okay, this goes off to the Nimbus AI model, then we'd have to start that all again. And the chances of getting something third party approved by big enterprise infosec teams is pretty much nil, I would say.
Yeah. Rick, I think you had a comment you were going to make.
I was just looking at the bot framework on the drawing here because it does give you the ability now to go build that Copilot Studios front-ending your contact center with some automation, with some AI, giving them the ability to kind of seamlessly interface with the contact center, right? But front-end seamlessly escalate into the contact center with probably with contextual information, things like that, which I think is pretty important, right? A lot of the solutions you see out there are standalone solutions, and so when you put the Copilot Studio stuff in front and you're able to bring it into Nimbus and Teams via ACS, you get all the data, you keep all the data, but you get to front end it with AI. Interestingly enough, this morning I called my bank, USAA, just for a wire transfer that exceeded the amount that I could do on my app, and I noticed the voice was different than the normal voice, and it was a more sort of conversational, what can I do for you today, right? And I was like, okay, they're doing something that's a bit different, and so I'm curious to go dig into it and start asking them a few questions on what they've done to basically to front end that. But what I thought was funny was when I got to the departmental stuff, all the greetings were the same back here. So I could tell exactly what they're doing is front ending with some AI to see if they can route something differently, and then delivering back into the system where the system prompts that were legacy system prompts from their phone system took over. So I see a lot of this happening in the future. This is cool. This is cool stuff, Ollie.
Good stuff. All right. Well, I don't want to dominate the whole call with slides, so I think I'll finish the slides there. But I don't know where you guys want to take it from here.
Yeah, I think you had kind of brought it up, Ollie. This was literally just announced, so it'd be interesting to know if Luware, and maybe it's not public information yet, you guys don't know, and feel free to say you don't know. It'd be interesting to know when Luware thinks that they'll have this model kind of ready to put out in front of the customer base.
Yeah, so I believe, I might need to fact check this. I believe Microsoft said it should be GA this summer. Now, I think obviously that can change, but we were in private preview. So that was essentially a confidential program that Microsoft, along with some other vendors, were on prior to Enterprise Connect. I believe now it's public preview, and that's what the announcement was last week, and then should be GA in the summer. We should have our first features built on this, I'd say around that same time, end of Q2, start of Q3. And that'll be starting with handling the call in the attendant console. And then we'll be building that out from there. But a Nimbus Power, which is what we're calling that model built on ACS, that would essentially just be a switch that you can switch on a service by service level. And you'd probably start by switching that onto your attendant console services so you can handle the call in the attendant console. And then we'll go from there, looking at building it into CRMs. Our AI tools, we were already building quite a lot of AI features, some of them using ACS, some of them just using Copilot. So yeah, there's some exciting stuff coming there, but I think the first real feature that you'll see will probably be around that summertime.
Cool. Awesome. I think, guys, I mean, that's a great sort of spot for us to kind of call the info that we're delivering from Enterprise Connect that was related to the announcements. Those announcements. Were there any other announcements, Brandon, that were pretty interesting there? The show in general, we thought was interesting. There was a decent amount of people there. So any other call outs from Enterprise Connect for you?
There were, but now that we're over a week out, I'd have to pull up the notes, and I wasn't prepared to speak about the other features since this was specific to the extensibility. My only other call out is just to remind people as they're listening that this extensibility is, around Azure Communication Services. It's different than extensibility for PSTN calls, which I think would be interesting to do a show at some point around that, just to show what it looks like for the businesses out there, as opposed to what we just spoke to Ollie about.
I think I'm glad you reminded me of that one, Brandon, because I remember seeing it and speaking about it a bit internally when that came out a few months ago. But I think I want to go do some digging on that, because having stuff in the Teams cool, and having that stuff in the window, some pretty cool possibilities there as well.
Yeah, and again, I haven't spent any time looking at it. It just went GA, looks like February, and it's still kind of it's launched, but probably still rolling out to all the tenants. But it would be interesting, speaking to you, Ollie, to take from the other direction, take your attendant console and put it into the dialog box, and maybe that, because it's already an application within Teams, maybe that can be done easily enough. Maybe you and I can go collaborate on the side and see if we can't get a working demo. From what I understand, it's not that complex to set these things up from a dialogue extensibility perspective.
I'm going to translate that just for everybody else out there that's not technical, just really quickly, because that was just a whole lot of stuff. But the translation is this: when you get the toaster pop in Teams and you to answer the call, right? The extensibility stuff that Brandon's talking about for PSTN calling is essentially contextual information. So notes, transcriptions, those sorts of things can come right into a tab, right into that toaster box where you're taking the call, so that you can achieve the same thing that Ollie was talking about, which is instead of pivoting from the Teams, the toaster, and then going to your attendant console, where you're moving things into the attendant console as an example, as a couple of buttons, right? This is to bring that information into the toaster box so that you can live in that toaster box when you're taking a call from the PSTN. Whew.
Yeah, it just gives companies options on how they want to operate, and I can see a world with big enterprises where they're going to want to offer both modes of operation. User choice is very important.
Well, there's two different groups here, right? Because you've got the call center group that is embedded in the contact center software. They're embedded in Luware. Let's just say they're working out of Luware, out of Nimbus. Right. And then you've got the rest of the organization. Here's where it's going to come in handy. Then you've got the rest of the organization. But wait, here's where it becomes interesting. When you transfer the call from a contact center user to a non-contact center user, that non-contact center user is now capable of receiving the information from that call in the contact center, the contextual information, the transcription, the why you're calling, who it's calling, all that stuff can be delivered in that call box. Now, so that is what's pretty interesting to me. Now, there might have been different ways to handle that, Ollie. That could have been handled in Nimbus or something, or in chat as an example. But now I think it's pretty. Is it pretty seamless? Tell me if I'm wrong there.
I think that use case you've just described is a really important one. That's the reason people want to put their contact center in Teams in the first place, is because they need to bring in knowledge workers outside of the contact center. So making that transfer process simple, being able to report on that is a big consideration. Otherwise, you would just have your contact center on a third party app where they just get hammered with calls all day, and then have everybody else on Teams. But as we all know, that you need to have that transferability, if that's even a word, but you need to be able to transfer that context as well.
And that's where the world has sat for all these years, right? Disparate calling platforms, one for contact center, one for back office knowledge workers, and that's the gap that needs to be bridged.
That's what Luware is now doing. They're bridging the gap between those two things now, right? And the release of what Microsoft has released, the extensibility, and even what we just talked about, they kind of go hand in hand. They're not at two different ends of the spectrum here. I think those two things combined really bring that sort of call center function, and then the information sharing to the non-contact center but PSTN users. So pretty cool.
Nice.
Well, Ollie, did you have a demo? You don't have a demo because you don't have a GA or anything to show yet. So I guess we can pin it there and tap you on the shoulder for, maybe the continuing crown for most times on the show, to give us a demo of what Luware's working.
Wait for my T-shirt in the post, and I'll wear it next time.
That's all right.
We have one, Ollie, for you that says, "I can't hear you. You're on mute." So we've got one for you. I actually received them in the mail the other day, so I've got them in my office now. So we're going to send you one of those. And both of you guys are just tremendously polite and kind, because neither one of you called me out on. It's a PSTN call that's getting the contextual information, not a transfer internally. So I think I was wrong there. But anyway, you guys are very nice for not calling me out.
Hey, sometimes you just ignore what things are said.
All right, listen, everyone, that's going to be a wrap for episode 87, kind of update from Enterprise Connect a bit, and then as it relates to the contact center and what Luware is doing with the new tools that Microsoft has put out and is spreading to the organization. So pretty exciting. Brandon, anything else?
Yeah, I think April is upon us, right? This is the last Friday of March. We're headed into a really exciting month, April 15th and 16th, Comms V Next in Denver, Colorado. For those of you listening, if you have not signed up and you're not planning to attend, you should reconsider. We're 2 weeks roughly out from Comms V Next, one of the best all things Teams, really technical conferences there is here in the United States.
Yeah, one more thing. That was a great reminder. December 9th, everyone. So mark your calendars. December 9th. Sorry, I did that. I've done that before. December 9th. Sorry, April 9th. April 9th. It's because we're in DC. I get DC December. So yeah. April 9th, Momentum is and Microsoft on a road show at the Microsoft training centers, or what do they call them now? I forget what they call them. Yeah, the
Innovation Hub.
The Innovation Hub location. So in DC, April 9th, there is a whole all-day show, one for partners and one for customers. So 2 shows, 1 day, a great lunch at an amazing facility, the Microsoft Training Center, the Innovation Hub. Momentum will be there with Microsoft. So December 9th, Bailey, if you could drop the invite there in the comments down there. Like Brandon said, Comms V Next on April 15th. It's going to be a busy month. There's just a lot of things happening this month. So Ollie, good luck to you, sir, and your next month. Look forward to seeing when you come back and let us know. Everything's fantastic, and you've got a blue or pink thing to share with us.
Look forward to it. See you on the other side, guys.
There you go. That's a wrap, everyone. Episode 87. We'll catch you later.
Thanks for joining.